Welcome, Michelle Line here, leadership coach, and joining me today is Chris Baird, Director of Recreation, Culture and Parks at the town of Tillsonburg. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Michelle. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited that you're here to answer a few questions around leadership and your experience with our viewers today.
Okay.
As you know, I love working with new and emerging leaders. I like helping them go from that feeling of overwhelm when you first cross into management to that place of confidence and clarity to really be able to make a difference with their teams. And so today our viewers, they're in for a real treat. They have you for the next little bit as their experience mentor out there. Chris and I have known each other for, I think, about 15. I was doing the math, Chris. I think it's about 15 years now.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Yeah, so Chris and I had worked together for municipality, and we actually met sitting around the table at a workplace wellness committee. That committee at the time had the acronym of APPLE. Do you remember that?
I do. Active people participating.
Active people.
Something.
Yeah, participating or promoting some kind of lifestyle enrichment.
Lifestyle enrichment. That's right.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun. And so back then, Chris, actually, it was when I first noticed that your leadership style was quite unique. For me, it really stood out and it was different. It was light, it was inspiring, it was motivating, and really it encouraged me to self-reflect because what I found was that you were seeing some leadership abilities in me that I hadn't yet even noticed. And so, I thank you for that because you have been a significant source of mentorship to me over the years. So I do thank you for that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Diving right in, and I'd like to ask you, before we get into your leadership journey, maybe one of your most memorable mistakes that you've made as a leader, because I find that we often learn best by when we've made some kind of big mistake in leadership. So if you're comfortable, could you share with us maybe one of your most memorable mistakes?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe the one that stands out is, we've all been asked to participate in a team discussion or a team project, and you make the assumption, that you're going to be in a leadership role, and you make the assumption that everyone on the team kind of knows what's expected and what's going to happen. You don't realize that there could be some subtleties that previous groups or individuals have worked on before that didn't quite work out, and now you're being merged together. So the expectation that, hey, this is going to be great, we're going to do great things, and you literally come out of the starting blocks and you fail, not trying to build a real team environment. And so I think it's really important on the front end in terms of bringing a leadership group together to understand everyone's background, where they're coming from, and what is going to be expected of them in that role. It's all too often where we're just assigned participation on a committee of some kind. And you really need to do a self-assessment and get an idea of everybody's skills and in order to come together and start off on the right foot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And how long does it, have you found that it takes to really kind of get that sense of individuals and to build that up?
Well, it really depends on the personality of the leader or mentor and those of the group. Is it what is it? Is it a formal setting? Is it like a council meeting, things like that are a bit more formalized, or is it something like a fun group that's been put together to organize an event? So that's going to determine your different outcomes and maybe your approach. Is this something you need to start off very formal and make sure that you have all the facts, or is there an opportunity to be more blue skying and having some fun with it? Sometimes the best leadership experiences start out with fun. Everyone's done those really great icebreaker type roles that loosen the crowd, make people smile, and kind of set off in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. So some real intentional leadership there and engaging that to the audience in the task.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So maybe now just share with our viewers a little bit about your leadership journey and how you made it to where you are.
Sure. Well, I came out of university in the late 80s, all set to go. I was going to do these great things, and really fell flat on my face for the first year or two. And I think it happens to everybody. that you need did you study the right thing? Do you really understand where you want to go? And it's really difficult for young people to come out of school and have a clear path or plan to get through their career. In my particular case, you look back at someone who's given you a break, and I can think of one or two individuals that really gave you that one opportunity, and I believe that exists. Any good leader can think back of someone who really helped them, gave them the courage or the confidence to be able to make that next step. And in my particular case, it was really just a stepping stone, a year in an interesting career in land surveying, and that helped me develop the foundation and to better understand the process of development. And that introduced me to an employment opportunity with a local municipality in the Ottawa area. And from that point forward, it was a growing municipality. When I started, it was about 24,000 population, and 7 years later, it had doubled. So with that became doubling of responsibilities. And one of the biggest challenges in that role was coming in as a fairly young employee and working with a team of 5 or 6 people who were almost double my age. And so how do you build teamwork and confidence and be able to show leadership for those who have had pretty much a half or full career ahead of you?
Yeah. So that certainly is a challenge I know a lot of new leaders do face. And so how did you personally overcome that or work your way through that to build that confidence?
Well, I know it's somewhat cliche to be able to say, the golden rule, treat one as you treat as one to be treated as well. And in this particular case, it's really that was really a really important first step. Listening and caring and leading by example are also very important attributes where you can gain respect. If you're faced with all of a sudden leading a new group that doesn't know you, doesn't know your past history or practice, to be able to be open to listen to their concerns. I can think of another example midway in my career where I was in a new role, clearly did not have the experience, but the operational details, but understood the leadership and what was expected. And so for the first time in many of their careers, they were never asked for their opinion or what do you think we should do? How should we go about that? And so in that particular case, I was able to build trust really when they realized that any good leader should not be afraid to admit that they don't have all the answers. It's okay not to, but take the time to find that out or consult with that group or others to get the proper answers to come up with a proper approach.
Yeah, sounds like you just really respected them as the experts in their field and involved.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter whether they're CAOs or frontline staff, they all are the respective experts in their field.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Thank you. And so in terms of your leadership style then, because I know from working with you and from our viewers are hearing, you are very intentional in your leadership, but how would you describe your leadership style? Maybe in a sentence or a few words, what's your style?
Well, again, you've known me for 15 years or so. I like to have a lot of fun, to work hard, have fun, and celebrate successes. I think it's really important. Every task or opportunity has a start and a finish line, and I think it's really important to celebrate when you do accomplish that, and not quickly shove it off to the side, but rather keep it posted up on the wall. Put a line through a task or a project so that you don't forget what's been accomplished previously and just quickly move on to the next task and so on. Have fun, and again, listen, lead by example. Those are, I think, really important attributes, and it's worked well for me in my career.
And I know it's been a rapid year of change with the pandemic across the board for everyone. But within the township of Tillsonburg that you've been working for this over the past year, what's been your secret for managing change? So if you could share with us maybe with your team, because there's that sort of level, but when you're up in a director role, I mean, there's how do you manage it with yourself and maybe some of your managers or your colleagues there?
Yeah, so definitely change. I think everyone has to understand first that change is constant. As much as people don't like change, I think there are many more that would not thrive in an organization or in some capacity where there's no change. It's just the same thing day in, day out. The boredom sets in. There's, the lack of interest, that sort of things. So admit that change is a constant and it's happening around us. Coming into a new role as I did in Tilsonburg, there were some staff changes that created a lot of anxiety with the team. And one of the first things that I'd recognized is helping that staff group understand that what the change had happened, and that change included my arrival and my new sort of responsibilities to build morale, get projects back on track, and move forward. And that change at that point, that was behind us, and now there are new changes, new things coming together, and that they would be part of that solution. So some of the other things are communicate the change to all. Here's who I am. Here's what we're going to do. We're all in this together. If there is some bad news, if there are changes that still have to be enacted, don't hold back those. Don't keep them to yourself. Try to be open if you can, so that people aren't hit broadside with, a big issue, just to say, we still need to make some changes in this area, or, what do you think about improvements here? I think there's more work that can be done. So kind of lay it out in that manner. Also recognizing that some individuals on the team, they're going to be early adopters to change. They want change. They thrive under that. And there are those that quickly follow, that say, yeah, I like to do that. You can all think of that, even as young kids playing in a group, those that are always out looking for new things to do, and the others that follow along. Every organization and society needs those, the followers and so on. And then the late adopters, those that can't accept change. It inevitably comes. And sometimes those folks don't, you shouldn't leave them behind. They're the ones that are going to need attention just as much as the early adopters that want to break out of the stall and run full speed. You want to keep a cohesive group. So managing both the high performers and those that may need a little bit more support. And again, it's all in communications, listening to their feelings and seeing how you can help them all work together.
Yeah, that's great. So that transparency and that really person-centered sort of communication. And you had said, I like you had said, we're all in this together, right?
Right, exactly.
And just addressing that, even some of the harder conversations around change, and addressing some of those elephants in the room, right? And so you had said, like you said to them, it's a change, even just having me come in with this mandate for this change. And so having some of those conversations and not side skirting them, I think, sounds like it's served you really well.
And not all change has to be bad.
Yeah.
Again, different leaders have different personalities and characteristics. I've been successful taking a positive perspective, having some fun. It's a nice way to kind of break the mold, because many times the change has resulted in a lot of shock and fear. So if there really is no longer those issues to worry about, confront them and take on a new tact.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Thank you. And when you're going through this pandemic and going through change, entering into a new workplace, I would imagine self-care is probably pretty important for yourself as a leader. So, we set the tone as leaders, and we want to be able to lead by example and model that as well. What does self-care mean to you, or what does that look like for you, Chris?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because we've all been in that role where we've worked really hard and push. And sometimes the tank's empty. If others rely on you to be built up or to be supported, if you can't support yourself and bring your best to the game, it's really hard for others that are going to need that support. So definitely making time for a really good work-life balance. I know it's overrated. A lot of people say that. But I think there's been a real trend. Maybe one of the positive outcomes of the pandemic has been, being forced to work from home or in alternative work arrangements. And you can see that you still get the work done. In fact, you may have a little bit of extra time that you could go for a walk with the dog, or you could maybe leave a little bit earlier and finish something up later in the day where you'd normally be, expected to be out of the office and on your way home. There's more to life than just work. And that's really important. A lot of people define themselves and their success through their job, and that's understandable. But for they may be challenged later in their career when they reach a point of retirement where they really have a difficult time identifying who they are in their role in society or in their community if it's been so heavily focused on their career.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something to think about as you transition through your career and through life, and anticipate those changes. Could be financial, spiritual, emotional, all of those things that you need to be a sort of a rounded human. They're important to be thinking about, particularly in the mid to later part of your career.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. That's great advice and great food for thought for our viewers out there as they're working their way up. But yeah, to really find that balance and what defines who they are.
For sure.
Now, um, what have you found to be most rewarding in a leadership position?
Well, there's the obvious ones that you've reached a point where perhaps you're in a management role or in a leadership role. You're recognized in the community for what you do. That's important for some. Others that you can accomplish. You've accomplished things. You've set some goals earlier in your career and you've achieved them. But for me personally, the most rewarding thing has been watching others that I've been able to mentor up through the ranks to become, a peer, or to even continue further. And that could be within your same organization or other organizations. It's always sad when you see someone mentored right at the door. And we had a lot of examples of that where it's like, oh, you did too well of a job. They've left us now. But really seeing them succeed, I can think of one example in my former career was seeing the qualities in an individual and seeing them under their own steam progress and become a better person, a better leader. In this one example, they took on my former role, my job. They told me very early on, I want your job. And some people would see that as threatening rather. But in my particular case, I was flattered. I was like, wow, okay, that's great. How can I help you get there? What did I do? What are the mistakes I learned along the way? And to see someone come up like that is really, really proud for sure. It's like parenting in a sense, because you get to experience that, even though it's not a family setting, it's still your workplace family. And when they succeed, you succeed.
Mm-hmm. Any other words of wisdom that you would like to share with new or emerging leaders that you feel would be helpful for them in this transition?
Well, probably looking at each organization is going to be very different, whether you're in the public sector, private sector, or if your career happens to take you both in and out. You're going to have different challenges. The one I spent most of my career in the public sector, and that usually means elections, new elected officials. And so working for perhaps a high-performing private sector company that's bottom line driven, that's really progressive, you can get a lot of things accomplished, but it's very aggressive. Working in the public sector, the challenges there have been leadership changes every 4 years and taking on a new direction, a new route, and knowing that if you want to have a full career in that role, that you're going to have very different leaders and different leadership styles every 4 years. In this particular case, whether you work for a municipality, the provincial government or the federal government, this is just expected. There's going to be changes, new ministers, new mayors, new councillors, new premiers, this sort of thing.
Yeah, so flexibility required in that type of leadership for sure.
Put on your feet for sure, even though it might be 4 years at a time. And then again, reflecting those changes and helping some of the younger and newer staff members understand that this is normal, that we worked really hard on a project and all of a sudden we're not doing it. We're not seeing it through to completion, or presenting something that's going to be really great with positive outcomes that, we may get to almost to the finish line and they won't fund it. They won't approve it. So learning to manage those expectations are important as well.
Very important. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time today, sharing with us your leadership journey. It's always such a pleasure connecting with you. So thank you so much, and I can't wait to connect again.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm really pleased to have joined you today, and I hope others can learn a few tips from what we've discussed this afternoon.
Yes, I'm sure they absolutely will. Thank you.